right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel today. So again, if you are a UCSB student, please do use that link to sign on in. And otherwise, y'all can actually introduce yourself in the chat because we'd love to know who's here, including the high school students as well. But with that being said, let's get started. So we're just going to introduce our host for the evening. So hi everyone, I'm Miranda. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a third year majoring in psychological and brain sciences with a double minor in applied psychology and theater, and I am a first gen student.
And hello everyone, my name is Jacqueline. I use the pronouns she, her, hers, and I actually graduated from UC Santa Barbara in 2015 with a double major in language, culture, and society and Spanish with a minor in education, and I as well am a first generation student.
So before we get started and ask our panelists questions, I wanted to talk to y'all a little bit about the ONDAS Student Center. So for those of y'all who aren't familiar with us, we are a student center located at UCSB. I know we have some high schoolers attending right now, and the reason I want to highlight this is just for, for future reference, wherever y'all end up, to let you know that there are resources for first generation students in general and resources for students in general. So please make sure to reach out to them. This is our website where y'all can learn more about us. This is our current staff photo. So some of the resources we offer are, we actually have our grad peer mentor, Sophie. She couldn't be here tonight, but she offers weekly hours where she can meet with students to talk about graduate school. And we also have drop-in advising from academic advisors on campus as well, over Zoom right now, of course. And then as peer mentors, there are 7 of us. We, again, all have different majors. We also host office hours where students can come to talk to us about their classes, about our extracurriculars, about generally anything that y'all want to talk about. And we also host like workshops, like anything. So one of our workshops is actually this workshop today, as well as this previous workshop that we had, which was actually just like making winter decor last quarter. So yeah, I just want to highlight to y'all that there are resources out there for you. So no matter where you end up going, whether it be UCSB or not, to please reach out to your resources and use them. So now for our panelist introductions. Panelists, y'all are totally welcome to read off and introduce yourselves, as I'm sure the students would love to hear from you.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Woods. I'm so happy that everyone can be here. This is very exciting. So my PhD is in neuroscience and behavior. So I really loved when I was in undergrad, I took a class in brain and behavior and just kind of was like, yes, this is what I need to do. So I was very lucky in that way because I got inspired really early. I graduated UCSB with my PhD in 2006. Same year, I actually defended 9 months pregnant. So same year, my second child was born. And I am currently an assistant teaching professor at UCSB. I've been in this position since the start of my 5th year, which is very exciting. And I do love to dance. And Miranda actually took one of my classes. And in that class, we dance at the beginning of class. We do a little Just Dance video to like wake up because it's usually at 8 in the morning. So I really like to dance, and I like to do Just Dance because I'm not that good at dancing. And I can make Indonesian food, pretty good Indonesian food. So it's good to meet everybody.
I still remember the dance. It was very fun. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Mauricio Cedillos, and I'm really excited to be here. So first off, I want to say thanks to ONDAS for creating this wonderful event, and thanks for Jacqueline for inviting me to this panel. As everyone, I am also a Gaucho alumni, graduated 11 years ago, time flies, class of 2010. I am also a community college product, so I am a transfer student. Unfortunately, I was only there at Santa Barbara for 2 years. I wish I was there for more. But I did also get a counseling degree master's at the University of Laverne. Currently right now at 2 community colleges where I serve as a coordinator, as an instructor, and also as a counselor. So my passion is within higher education. One fun fact about me was that one time I went to Mexico in my teenage years, and I got confused for a boy band over there. And just, you know, the story goes through through so many phases, but it was fun. I was a celebrity for almost 2 or 3 nights, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And the band, if you're aware with Latin American culture, it's called Cumbia Kings, and that's the same band that started off with Selena. So yeah, I got confused with one of the boy band members there. So that was a lot of fun and a great experience. But really happy to be here.
Hi, all. My name is Katrina Lopez. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited. I think it's great that this program exists. It didn't exist when I was at school. I had graduated in 2011. So it's super awesome to see the resources that have been developed over the course of the time. But a little bit about myself. I was a biological sciences major. I was at UCSB for all 4 years. I also was a minor in applied psychology and educational studies. I didn't pick up that minor till my senior year. And I'm honestly really glad that I did. One of my favorite courses was in leadership through the educational studies program. And there's so much that really resonated with me to where I am today and what I do as a talent manager. And so if you're in school right now at UCSB, you can always pick up extra, minors, change your major, whatever it is, we can discuss more about that. But just wanted to make that note. As I mentioned, I am a talent manager. I've oversee essentially all the full cycle recruitment, corporate recruitment types of positions. So whether that's a customer service, marketing, finance, accounting, HR, whatever it may be within the healthcare field, but just on the business side of it. And I've been doing that for 5.5 years. And I also focus on university partnerships. So for instance, with UCSB, as well as other universities, heavily focused within the state of California, as well as in Arizona and Texas. I also oversee all of our onboarding to really make sure that it's a positive candidate, new hire experience for folks that are coming on board. And I also, my role expanded within this past year to also oversee different learning and development and career development opportunities. So really excited again to be here and to see that we're able to have these types of conversations earlier on within your time as a student, whether even in high school too. And some fun facts is I'm still very close friends with actually a lot of folks that I went to UCSB with. I had a few conversations just these past couple of days, and it's amazing to see actually how your network is starting now and before that. And I even hired somebody 2 years ago that I was good friends with at UCSB to join the company I'm at today, and that we were in touch with just periodically over time. So again, you don't realize it, but networking is honestly happening now in the relationships that you're making.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zoila Cornejo. So I'm the oldest of the panelists, it looks like. So I graduated in 1992 from UCSB, and I majored in Spanish literature. Hearing your stories and all the accomplishments and what you did and what you're currently doing with UCSB, I think back at that, man, I should have taken advantage of a lot more of their resources that were available. I reiterate what someone said here. I wish I had this type of format when I was going to school, because I think it's so valuable. So, kudos to the team for putting this on, and for everything else too that's available for all the students. So I currently work for Inspire Brands, and Inspire actually just took over. They just acquired Dunkin', and so we're part of the Inspire Brands, and I work for the Dunkin' side of the business. With Dunkin', I'm actually an operations manager, so I work with the franchisees shoulder to shoulder with their teams, all dealing with the restaurant side of the business. So whatever it takes, the customer side, the sales, the transactions, profitability, people, etc. Whatever impacts the restaurant, that's what I help the franchisee to build their business. And actually, prior to Dunkin', I was with McDonald's for over 21 years, and the same type of business, just a different company. And I did different types of positions there as well, all connected and tied to the restaurant. So that's a little bit about me from the business side of things. The fun fact, I just put something here, not really relating anything to currently, but one of the things that I am proud of is that when I graduated anyway from UCSB, I didn't go through the traditional ceremonies, graduation ceremonies. I actually went through the Chicano Latino ceremony, and I gave the commencement speech in Spanish. So, something that I'll never forget and very proud of. So that's something, a fun fact for me. But on the personal side, I also like to travel. And that's unfortunately, this last year, that's been something that hopefully with the vaccine coming now, that we'll be able to do again. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you to all of our panelists for their introductions. So now we're going to go ahead and get started with our Q&A.
So we do have a couple of questions lined up for our panelists who will get to know a little bit more deep through these questions. And then we will open the room for Q&A in case if any of our audience do have any additional questions. And feel free to answer these either in the specific order that you were introducing yourself in. So starting with Dr. Woods and ending with Zoila, or if any of you have any comments that, it's like awkward silence or whatnot, feel free to just jump in and answer for yourself. So the first question, we'll get started, is what was an important resource or campus organization for you during your educational journey as a first-gen student? How did these programs assist you in completing your degree? And if you didn't join, and you didn't take advantage, how we've heard of so many first-gen students, including myself, of resources organizations, you can also elaborate on that experience and how that affected you.
So I didn't really do use a lot of resources. I didn't really know if, I graduated in 2006, so I'm not sure what was available, to be totally honest with you. I would say though that I was reflecting on this with Katya, and one of the things that I think is really important for first-gen students is to have really strong mentoring relationships. And so I did have two just fantastic mentors. And I think that's one of the things that made sort of the biggest difference in my success. So I didn't use like a campus org per se, but I did have, two just honestly fantastic mentors who were supportive, not only academically, but, they got to know me and knew a little bit about my life and could support me in many different ways. So I would say mentoring for me was a really important part of the journey being a first generation. I was first gen for both my bachelor's and my PhD. So yeah, it was definitely a different experience. And my family's incredibly supportive, but it's just not a context they understand, So it was interesting from that perspective. So I would say mentoring.
And Dr. Woods, if you don't mind elaborating a little bit on how you established that mentorship. It's a question that might be asked a little bit later, but now that you're on the subject, I think mentoring has become such a huge deal nowadays that wasn't very common in the days before or just within the first gen population. So if you can elaborate a little bit on how you established that relationship.
So I actually went to UCSB for my undergrad and my graduate, which is not necessarily typical. But what had happened, and I totally fell into it. So I got lucky, basically. I was a transfer student and I did work study. And the work study job I got offered was to be basically one of the professors had been promoted to be, they were like the interim dean of something. And they said if they were going to do it, they got a work study student to basically like do all their correspondence for them. And so that was my job. So I basically got to work with this professor, and I would send out letters, and I would type the letters of recommendation. I'm old, y'all. I would type the letters of recommendation, and I would get all the envelopes ready. And, you know, I took care of like all the basically correspondence and she was writing a book at the time. So I was doing like the references for the book and, you know, that kind of stuff. So really my first mentor was her, and it was totally lucky. It was through my, you know, my work study job. And then she actually recruited me for her lab because I'm pretty organized. And I worked in her lab and I didn't like it because it was social psychology. And so I worked in her lab for like a year before I convinced her to let me work in a neuroscience lab. And then she basically kind of set up, she said, you should really work in this lab because this person is really amazing. And so again, I got sort of lucky as far as then my lab that I worked in was a fantastic mentor, but she sort of handpicked that person, that lab, because she wanted me. She said if I wouldn't work in her lab, I at least had to be in a good lab. So honestly, I feel kind of bad because I would say I got really lucky, you know, but I would say to use, I do know there's, you know, still lots of interesting work study. And I do think that anytime a student can work on campus instead of work off campus, I think is a really a good strategy, because you make, you know, relationships in a different way that way that can be very useful.
Is it okay if I go next? Yeah, wasn't sure. Okay. So first off, I would be all over ONDAS if I was a graduate student. I think you guys are doing amazing things. So definitely would have been part of that. So I do definitely resonate with those who said that, wow, what a great program. But I think for me as a transfer student, as a community college student, the first program that comes to mind when I saw this question was EOP. And the reason why is because EOP helped me make a good transition to UCSB. It helped me with my academics, it helped me with getting guidance, it helped me with the computer lab and the resources there, but it also gave me a sense of belonging, and it gave me a sense of empowerment. And the reason why was because I was able to connect with people that looked like me, right? When I was going to the campus there, I really felt like the minority. When I was going to community college, it wasn't like that because I live in LA now and most majority is Latinx. But going to UCSB at that time, I did feel like the minority. So going to EOPS, I did connect with people of students of color. I did connect with Latinx, and I did connect with a lot of first gen. And I thought that was really important. And they also gave me an opportunity to get involved, whether that was organizations or clubs. So I remember being part of organizations that I had passions for, that I had things in common. So I would recommend for those who are not part of organizations or clubs to get in and to get involved, but to get involved in things that you love, that you have a passion about, right? So my thing is sports, politics, Latin America. So UCSB offered all of that and more, right? I think you guys have about 300 clubs in there or something like that. So that was an opportunity for me to get involved, get to know people, network, and connect with people. And those are the things, the two resources and organizations that stand out to me personally, and will always be that.
And I can piggyback off of that. For myself, EOP was also something that really resonated with me, and I didn't know they had reached out to me, provided me, information on it, and I remember going to some of the more counseling sessions and learning a little bit more and seeing how they could be a resource for me, and that was something that was valuable. But something else is I was a biological sciences major. I don't work in regards to, specifically necessarily utilizing my degree in that sense. I work on more the business side of the healthcare field, but I was also part of Rho Psi Eta pre-health sorority, and I found out about that, which I had no idea, existed, but it was helpful for me because there were other folks, we were all taking the same classes together, and so it naturally just provided this additional, study group, somebody else that you can relate to. And ask questions, and so that was something that was really helpful for me. But I found out about that through a friend of a friend that was in the dorm that I was in FT, which is no longer called FT anymore at the time, and ended up running into her, and she told me about the program. And so that was something, or that organization, and that was something that was really helpful for me that I didn't join until my sophomore year. So also I would encourage folks to not be afraid to try different things out, look at other organizations that are out there, having the sense of awareness now of hey, I think I might be interested in this. Let me just check out this organization and see what they have to offer. Also other students, because I do talk, with my university partnerships, and some of my recommendations that I have for college students is, internships is a great way of also leading into the mentorship, as well as just volunteering. I did a lot of volunteering at my time at UCSB, and I met other folks of various ages, various backgrounds by doing that, and had different professional experience too. And then also, as I mentioned, the educational studies minor that I had opportunities with that where you did more on-site kind of quote unquote internships, volunteer work as well. And that led to other professional development for myself. And to Dr. Woods' point, I highly recommend, I tell students all the time, if you have work study, you're utilizing that, or just opportunities to work on campus, you can build a lot of great relationships and networking that way too.
So I also, I'm a product of EOP, and but along with that, I found El Centro, and El Centro was a place where everyone gathered, and like Mauricio said, where I could meet with other individuals that looked like me, and that we had similarities, similar backgrounds, etc. And like Vanessa said earlier, back in the day, mentor, but that wasn't really something that we really talked about. But looking back now, I think that my peers, my friends, they were the mentors, because those were the individuals that we would talk amongst each other to see, how we were doing in a class, or what was the plan, which way, which direction, was it that we were supposed to go in. I remember, I actually was on the 5-year plan. And the reason for that was my first year was really navigating through a lot of, what courses was I supposed to take, and, what was the path. I didn't have that clear path. But again, I go to my friends and peers and so forth that we were experiencing and going through the same things at the same time. And being, a lot of us were also first gen, and having those same similar experiences. So El Centro for me was a place to gather, a place to, go and speak with other individuals, go to the advisor there. And that was really the strength, I think, for me in helping me get through my time there at UCSB. And my 5 years, I don't regret it. I actually, tell my nieces and nephews and other fellow, siblings, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with going to school for 5 years. If that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. Don't rush it, because, it's something that you should really experience. And it's more than just classes and school. It's the social piece of it, as we well know from UCSB. And it's really fun, and just take advantage of it.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. I think it's super cool, at least for me, as an undergrad right now, for y'all to like kind of call out like different resources that I personally also use. So I think it's really important that students know about those as well. So our next question is, how did you choose a major, and did you ever switch majors? If so, was the transition difficult? And if you did not switch your major, like how did you make the decision to stay with it?
Did you want to go in the same order again, or yeah?
It's completely up to y'all, whatever is easiest.
I feel bad speaking first all the time, so maybe we could switch the order and go backwards.
Yeah, so if we want to start with Zoila and then work our way down this time, that's fine.
Okay. So when I first was going to school, I had it in my head, you know what, I want to be an attorney. I want to go to law school. That was my plan. But then I got into school and started taking poli-sci classes, I started taking law class, pre-law and so forth as well. But at the same time, I was also taking classes that I truly enjoyed, even though I did enjoy poli-sci. You know, I really enjoyed taking literature, and specifically Spanish literature. And so, again, like I previously mentioned, my first year was a struggle in the sense that I took multiple classes from the same section that hurt me in the long run, because that's why, you know, I had to take longer to finish to graduate. And so I think it was during my junior year. So, I was looking at double majoring, poli-sci and Spanish lit, but I was getting closer to graduate. I still needed more courses for poli-sci. And I thought, you know what? I'm dropping it. I'm just going to take Spanish lit and graduate with that. The whole point for me was to graduate. I didn't want to hold me back from actually completing that goal of graduating in 92. And so for me at that time, that was the choice I made. Was it difficult? It was hard in the sense, well, did I really need that poli-sci major in order to go to law school? And come to realize that I really didn't. And so that's why I made that decision. And I wanted, like I said, I wanted to graduate in 92. I didn't want to go back to summer school. I didn't want to come back in the fall. So I made that decision, just one major. So I commend, some of you who have double majors and, minors and so forth. That's fabulous. Everyone has their own trajectory. Everyone has their own experience. And that was mine.
I think I'm next. Yeah, okay. So as I mentioned, I was a biological science major. I just knew when I was in high school, I wanted to do something in the healthcare field. I had volunteered at UCLA since I'm from LA, and I was volunteering at UCLA in high school, and I knew that was something in healthcare, didn't really know what. And so that was my major. I was, pre-bio, and you have to be accepted into the major after 2-3 years of finishing all your prereqs, in which then I was at that point. A lot of folks change and switch out of bio. I feel like a lot start with that and they end up transitioning, and that's totally okay too. And looking back at it, what I know today is your major also does not define you. You don't need to even have a specific major. Even if you wanted to pursue healthcare, for instance, as an example, you don't need to be a biological sciences major or a sciences major at all. And so wanted to mention that part out there. But for myself, as I got to senior year, I wanted to go more into physical therapy, occupational therapy. And I was also taking all the different prereqs. I also, after finishing or graduating from school, I went straight to taking classes for the GRE in 2011, and I got accepted into grad school. And at that point, within the year after of applying, and at that point, I realized I actually didn't want to do it. I felt this pressure from myself, I guess, or society to, okay, from here you have to go to grad school, or from here you have to work, and I don't know what that work necessarily consists of. And so I as it came time to making decisions, I realized that's not what I see myself doing. I see myself maybe doing that in 10 years, but not after that. And I was working with a clinical psychologist for 3.5 years at that point, and continued working within that, working with children and families with autism spectrum disorders. So I was learning a lot more within that range. And at that point, I realized, well, I still enjoy healthcare and I still enjoy the people side of what I do. And that's how I went more in the business side of the healthcare field. So, again, you can make transitions at any point within your major. You can add on minors later on. I do also understand you can't be in school for forever for her bachelor's degree, and that would be great if you could. So I also understand the time constraint. So, you know, if you're third, fourth year, it's probably, or fourth year, you're probably like, okay, I can't necessarily change my major now, but, you know, what can you do to finish that? I know other folks that also have taken some of the prereqs at community colleges, you know, that maybe needed to transfer over while they were going to UCSB and were, you know, full-time, you know, student there as well. So there are other alternatives too.
Yeah, for myself, I think my transition was a little easier compared to others. Going into community college, I was undecided and I was leaning to English or business, but then I met sociology. And then that's when everything changed for me, my perspective, maybe my ideology as well, especially when I went to UC Santa Barbara and I got to take some of my upper division courses, which I found really fascinating. But I chose sociology because I felt like it's so much to study on in sociology. It's such a broad spectrum that you can learn about anything. But I also told myself, okay, what am I if I'm going to choose a major, I have to be something that I love, right? Knowing that I was going to go from community college and to UCSB, I knew that I had to, you know, pick up my game, and it was going to be a lot more difficult because I knew anticipated papers to be a lot more longer than just 5 pages, 20 pages, right? So if I'm going to write a 20-page paper, it's going to be something that I love, right? Something that I enjoy to read about, something that I enjoy to research. And that's exactly what happened. I really enjoyed learning about sociology. Sociology in Latin America. I minored in Latin America. So it was just a great experience for me. But also the fact that for sociology, for me, it was a stepping stone to my long-term goal. And my long-term goal was to become a counselor / administrator at a higher education. And during my time at community college, I was able to network because I worked at community college with counselors, with administrators, and with faculty. So during that time at community college, I was networking, I was building bridges, but at the same time, I was getting to know professionals. And I would always ask them about their journey towards their master's degree, their journey towards their doctorate degree. And what I found out that a lot of them were majoring in sociology because I had a good connection to counseling. So that was another reason why I chose that degree, because long-term wise, I wanted to get my master's degree and I knew that sociology would be a good foundation towards the counseling degree. And that's exactly what happened. And just fast forward to the counseling degree, since we're in the same topic, the reason why I chose counseling is because with counseling, you're able to do so much with it. It's very dynamic. Some of my peers call it gives you a lot of gas mileage. And what I mean by that is that you're able to teach, you're able to coordinate, you're able to counsel, and you're also able to become an administrator, all with that one degree. So for myself, a person that likes to do a lot of things and a lot of variety and a lot of diverse tasks, that's like the perfect career for me. So that's another reason why I chose that one.
So I actually started out wanting to be a clinical psychologist. I wanted to be a child psychologist, and then went to City College and started, you know, taking prereqs and all that, and just kind of realized that I actually would be a terrible counselor because I have no patience. So my hat is off to everyone who is a counselor, and took a, like I said, a biopsychology course and was just blown away. It was like my favorite thing. So when I transferred, I knew I wanted to do biopsychology because I'd taken that course, you know, right before I transferred. So I switched when I got to UCSB to biopsychology. And so then I was also a 5-year, right? I was on a 3-year plan because I had not taken a lot of the science prereqs that you actually need for biopsych, because it's essentially a pre-med track. And since I had to stay an extra year and I was like, well, maybe I do want to go to med school, I'm not sure. So I did the pre-med track and made sure I had a choice. I did decide not to, but I kind of waited till my senior year to decide what I wanted to do. So I didn't really change, you know, I kind of changed when I transferred, but didn't change once I got to UCSB. So I wouldn't say I had like a difficult transition. It just took a lot longer, but I was so, you know, similar to what Mauricio said, I was so happy, like I loved my classes because they were so interesting and it was what I loved, that it didn't feel difficult. It just, you know, was exciting. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So for the next 3 questions, if maybe 2 or 3 of our panelists want to answer these, just to allow room for Q&A for the audience. So our third question is, as a first-gen graduate, how did you balance pursuing your intellectual and professional goals with ensuring financial security, not only for yourself, but also for your family? So whoever wants to get started with that one.
So it's definitely an interesting question. I think for me, it was a lot about balance and really prioritizing, what was going to be the most important thing for myself and how could I also, support myself and be comfortable. I wasn't, trying to do anything that was going to make myself uncomfortable or put myself in a position I didn't want to be in, a few years later or in, major debt too. I did, after graduating, I did move back home. And, again, luckily for me, home wasn't too far away. And in LA, there's still a lot of resources and ways to be involved and pursue additional studies and certifications and whatnot, which I did. And so again, I think it's really just considering what's going to be best for you and prioritizing, whatever is most important.
Yeah, I also wanted to answer this question if possible. So I think for me, I wanted to connect with this class because I feel like my class of 2010 kind of can connect with this same class of 2021 for those who are graduating. And the reason why was because I'm a product of the recession. So I don't know if you guys recall, but in 2009, 2010, the economy crashed, or 2009. And my class, I remember my sociology professors telling us, hey, you guys are going to have a hard time looking for work. And we're like, what? And it happened, right? We graduated and we all had a hard time looking for work, especially for those who didn't have that professional full-time experience. So during that time, I remember that I had to go through a lot of employers to gain skills and to gain experience so I can get to my goal, which was community college. So it took me 5 years to get to community college. It's not easy to get into community college. And it took me 5 years. And then at community college, I decided to go full-time. Full-time to graduate school for counseling degree. But during that time, I was like, I'm not gonna quit my job because I have to be financially stable. So I'm going to keep my full-time job, but I want to be able to diversify as well. So that was my goal, my goal to ensure that I was able to be the best candidate I can possibly be for the counseling position. So I ended up working at 3 community colleges. I ended up doing my practicum, my field work, my internships, and it was a total of 60 hours for 2 years each week. So it was a lot of work. And now looking back now, it was all worth it. Because I was able to learn so much through that whole experience and that whole sacrifice and effort that I did.
So again, if any of the 2 panelists just want to answer this one, just to allow time for the open Q&A. So our 4th question is, have you experienced any inequity or injustice in the workforce for being a first gen? If so, describe your experiences and how you overcame them. And if you haven't, then maybe just any insecurities or any doubts that you may have had just joining the workforce as a whole.
Okay, so I'll go for this one. As I thought about this question, I really don't believe that I did experience the inequity or injustice. However, I have had great bosses, and those great bosses have taken care of me. I can remember, going for my first real, quote unquote, real job, and me wanting to ask for a raise and having that discussion about, okay, what is it what are my results, talking about my results and really selling what I had offered the company and why I deserved the raise. And one of the things, as I have learned throughout my career, is that what's the worst that can happen? Sometimes we don't ask because we're afraid of the answer, but if they say no, okay, then what is it that I need to do to get that raise? What is it that I need to do to get that promotion? So that has been something that has worked for me throughout my career. And, you know, we talked about mentors earlier. I think that's the other piece too in the workforce. It is very important to have that mentor because they're the ones that are able to guide you through and having those discussions with your boss about if there is an inequity in financially or whatever that looks like, that they can help you, that they can assist, and they can also talk to your boss if it's within the same company. So for me, that's what has been my experience. Like I said, I always fought for what I thought I deserved, but at the same time, I also had bosses that were great to me and that recognized that what I brought to the table and rewarded or gave me that recognition from a financial standpoint.
I thought this was a really interesting question. And I guess my first response, so I apologize, this could just be because I really am old. But I was in biopsychology, so kind of in a, you know, that kind of world. And so I don't necessarily, I'm not sure what inequity I experienced because I was first gen. I feel like I don't know what I don't know, but I definitely feel there was issues with my gender. So I definitely think there was some things that I noticed that I think were related to being a female in those spaces, or at least I identify as a female and in those spaces. So I thought that's what this made me think of, which was interesting. But if I was, I know that's a tangential answer. So to answer the question, I've thought pretty deeply about this issue of inequity because of first gen. And I do want to kind of echo what Zoila said, is that I think your mentoring sets up your network, because that's sort of what you're missing from this perspective, right? Like, why would it matter if you're first gen if you have a degree and you're in the field? And part of it has to do with who's your network. And so I think that the mentoring networking piece becomes really, really important for this, to sort of address this issue. So I don't know what inequity I faced being first gen, but I also do feel, like I said, I was fortunate to get a mentor very quickly. The other thing I would say, and I think this is true in many professions, but I taught part-time for a long time. It's called a Unit 18 lecture or a lecture, and it's not a good position as far as you don't have any benefits and they can hire and fire you as much as they want. And so in that position, your teaching reputation was everything, right? Like that's how, you know, and so I think your reputation matters a lot in many fields. And I think that's the thing you can control. And so that's what I always focused on, because like I can't always control some of the things, the systemic inequities that are going to exist for certain things, but I felt like I could control, you know, what I was putting forth as my reputation and those kind of things. So I would also add that. I don't know if it's useful, but that's something I've thought about a lot.
And for anyone who wants to answer this one, a little similar, and it can, you know, touch on the previous question, but have you faced any imposter syndrome? And if so, how have you gotten past the fear of failure and or not succeeding? And for those of you who don't know what imposter syndrome, it's basically not feeling enough or not feeling adequate to fulfill the obligations that are being asked of you, and in a nutshell.
I'll take this one if that's okay. Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is something that I felt at UCSB, and to be honest with you, I still feel today. Sometimes it just comes natural, right? But kind of to connect with our students, I did get imposter syndrome on the first day at Santa Barbara, and I remember that day because it was the first day of school, and like I mentioned before, I felt like the minority on the first day. I didn't feel like the majority, right? And it was intimidating. The campus, big campus, coming from community college to CSB, right? And being a first generation student, I felt intimidated. I felt fearful. And I remember walking into my first sociology class, and I was really excited. It was a lecture hall. So can you imagine coming from community college, a traditional classroom, going to a huge lecture hall that looks like an auditorium? That's intimidating, right? And you're fearful. And I remember the professor, she had a different way of teaching, not traditionally. She had a different philosophy. different approach. And it was very interesting. And she would be using these fancy words. I remember she used the word lethargic. And I didn't even know what that meant. And I remember the students, the culture there, they were participating. They were having a great discussion. And I was like, wow, this is only my first day of school. This is how it's going to be. So I walked out of there fearful. I walked out of there uncertain. And I walked out of there like I didn't belong at UCSB, right? I had that imposter syndrome. But as a result, I remember just reflecting back how I responded to that. And back then it was 2010, so smartphones weren't really around, or iPhones. They were around, but it was really expensive to get one. So I got me a digital recorder. And I remember recording all the lessons with the professor's consent, of course. And I remember recording those and taking notes, making sure I know, what the exam's going to be on, the quiz. I remember having this growth mindset. I didn't even know what growth mindset meant back then, but I know what it means now. But I was able to embrace the challenge. I was able to accept the criticism. I was able to have the desire to learn. I had that grit in me. And I was also able to ask for help, right? Meaning by visiting office hours and asking my EOPS advisor for help or another counselor. I was able to build vocabulary. So that's how I responded. But just moving forward and having it now, I have imposter syndrome at my work where I'm currently at. I'm relatively new to my position, and I'm still learning so much. And my supervisors ask me for big roles and big projects and big things. And sometimes I question myself, can I do this? So it's all about how you respond to it, right? It's all about how proactive you are and how prepared are you and how you're going to respond to that. And I think that's the best way to succeed. And if you failed, it's okay. You get up and you move forward, right? One of my favorite quotes is, I failed all over again, and that's why I succeed. That's Michael Jordan, right? So whether you failed, you get up and you still move forward and stronger. And for sure, if you practice, you will get better and you will respond better.
I would say, I'm sorry, I'm speaking twice in a row, but my friends and I we're in academia, obviously. And so we have this term, we call it feeling impostery. And so it happens a lot, for me at least. And I was talking to one of my friends, and they're a Black faculty in not a field that has a lot of Black faculty. And I said, does your imposter stuff get better? And he was like, no. So I don't mean to not be hopeful, but I feel like what we talked about is you just kind of, and maybe again, I have terrible coping mechanisms, but you just sort of learn to ignore it. Like you're just like, that's a thing. It's going to happen. And I don't think it's a thing. Like at least that's how I deal with it. So I have terrible coping mechanisms of denial. And I just pretend it's not a problem. But I do think it's important for people to talk about that it continues to happen, and that's okay. Because I think sometimes people set it up like, okay, I haven't been successful till that feeling goes away. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that feeling hasn't gone away for me. So I kind of just don't think about it. And then the other thing I think that comes up a lot with at least first generation students that I've had experiences with is I always took the approach that again, what can I control? And I can control how hard I work. And so I'm like, I can outwork anybody. So that's always been my other kind of philosophy, is I sort of deal with it by outworking everyone. So at least they can say I work the hardest.
All right. Thank you for all of our panelists for answering those questions. And now we're going to open up the floor for open Q&A. So if any students would like to unmute themselves or would simply just like to use the chat and ask any questions, you can go ahead and do so. And Jacqueline can read them off because I cannot see the chat right now.
Okay, so any advice can be personal or academic for our class of 2021. And this is being asked by a high school student, but it can be geared towards a senior in high school or in undergrad. So any advice in general?
I can provide one. I would say self-care. That has been by far at any point that you're at, whether you're in school, whether in your professional career, really making sure you're also spending time for yourself in order to not prevent that burnout. I remember, studying long days, long hours, but it's also really important to give yourself, or remember the things that, make you happy, that bring you joy, and setting that time for yourself. One of the things I've been, working remote, I haven't been back in my office I work at since February. And it was such an adjustment for me because I'm very much a people person. I like to see people interact, even just seeing how their weekend's going or what they ate for lunch or grabbing lunch with somebody. And to make that adjustment now, I was struggling initially. And one of the things I realized is I felt like I was just working so long. I didn't have concept of time. And I just kept working until really late at night. And I needed to do something about it. And so one thing I do for myself now that's helped a lot, and highly encourage you to do the same, is I will spend 10 to 30 minutes every morning before I start work, whether that's before you start class, you start doing homework or readings or actual professional work, is doing something for myself. So whether that's, I spend time doing stretching, working out, going and grabbing coffee, going for a walk outside, and I feel accomplished knowing that I spent that time doing it for myself. And I think especially with everything that's going on in the world and how we're affected, you will get more energy just for what you are doing for that given day.
I would say my advice would be, don't let fear hold you back from taking those chances. Whatever it is, applying to graduate school or applying to a school that you don't think that, I can get in, or for that job that you think, I'm not qualified for. You don't know. You don't know until you take that chance. And that's what I would say, just don't let fear hold you back from taking that opportunity.
Okay, just really quick, as far as what Katrina said, I think self-care is so important now because we're learning remotely, right? So I know one of the questions was there about learning remote, and self-care is huge. So one of the things that I've done, even as a faculty at community college, I'm sitting down a lot, and one of the things that I'm changing up this year is taking more breaks. Intermissions are super important, even more than ever. There's this thing called the COVID plus 19. I don't know if you've heard it, where you're gaining 19 pounds because you're sitting down. Yeah, it's real and it's happening. So just make sure that you're with remote learning, beyond the taking care of yourself, make sure you're managing your time. Make sure that you know when you're the best learner, whether you're a morning person or maybe you're a night person, and also finding a location where where you can get some privacy and you can get some quietness, right? Because I know sometimes it can get kind of crowded in your house with your siblings and your relatives and some strangers, whoever comes to your house, right? So just make sure you're aware of that. And also just make sure that you treat the online world like a real course, right? That's what I tell my students. It's very important. So be on time, participate as much as you can. Remember, you're paying for your education, right? And now it's looking a little different because it's virtually, but you're paying for this, right? I don't think the tuition changes because it's virtually now, right? It's the same tuition. And yeah, that would be my other advice. Also, just to network. Network is super underrated. Make sure you network. Someone mentioned it at the beginning of the session, is that ONDAS is a form of networking, right? Some of your friends here, some of your ONDA friends here might be working in the same industry that you might be working, right? So if they're in the industry and you're not in that same industry, you're gonna have to communicate with them and contact them, right? So networking is huge, and it doesn't have to be a professional. It can be a friend, it can be a relative, it can be acquaintance, right? You can utilize networking in so many levels.
Juan here is asking about GPA, really important and question to ask, whether you're in high school or in college already. So how important is your GPA after all? So many of us focus so much on GPA. So how important was it for you after all, whether you went to grad school or not?
It was actually depends. I'll be totally honest. Like, it depends. Like, if you're going to go get a job, nobody cares. Like no one asks what your GPA is in a job interview, right? But if you want to go to grad school, it depends on the program. Like, there's some programs where you can have kind of an average GPA, and if you have other things, you're going to be fine. But like right now, if you want to go to med school, if you don't have a good GPA, you have to do a post-bac program. You know what I mean? So it really does depend on what you want to do. But I would say if you want to get a job, I wouldn't stress that much about the actual number.
We have a question from Quetzali. So what would you say to a first generation what would you say a first generation student needs to know before entering college? And feel free if any of the students, college students on here wants to, answer this one as well. Go ahead.
I think I'll provide a little insight to this, I guess. I think something to know is to just kind of like, I don't remember particularly which panelist mentioned it earlier, but just like kind of embrace like the fear. Cause I feel like, as a first year, especially now, there's so many things that are intimidating. And like, I think it's just taking advantage of every situation, whether it be like learning online or learning in person. Like I actually had this discussion earlier today about how like, office hours is usually something so intimidating and everything, but then also like now it's kind of easily accessible no matter where you are in the world because you don't even have to move. You're just clicking on a button. And like, I feel like it's just like taking advantage of every situation that you have.
I would just echo some things that were said before about not being afraid. Just go for it. You never know, right? You should apply for the thing. Don't think you don't qualify, right? So I would just say that, like, be brave.
Yeah, I would add and say ask questions. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. And I always tell myself that to this day. You are only going to self-sabotage yourself if you don't actually, try. Working as a talent manager, and I think this is just something that relates to first gen where maybe we feel like, oh, well, we don't qualify. And I couldn't, ask my parents for their advice to tell them, otherwise, knowing my experience. And I can't tell you how many times and posting different positions, director level positions, and I get resumes of somebody that, maybe just graduated school and they don't have that level of experience yet. But if you see a role out there or something that you want to do, definitely feel free to always, apply, to reach out to other folks that are working at a certain company, utilize LinkedIn, network with people on there. You can also, I have folks that are in college now that reach out to me they want to hear more about my experience and what I do and how I got there. So please do the same. I highly encourage you to do that.
And I think we might have time for one quick question too. So, the number of first gen graduates or with degrees is significantly increasing, but there's definitely still room for growth. But how would you say you've used your experience as a first gen graduate to your advantage, whether it's with internship, post graduation jobs, summer jobs, in life? How have you used it to your advantage?
Can I just say, for me, it's made me hungry. So that hunger, because I was a first gen, because I was also the oldest in my family, it gave me that hunger to go for more. And that has driven me throughout my career, throughout anything really, personal, professional, whatever it is. It's always having that hunger, that drive, and that ambition. So that would be for me.
Well, it's just that when I read this question, I just feel like the whole first gen, like, has gotten so popular. I can't recall when I was going to UCSB, that that there were so many resources for first gen, right? So I'm proud as far as what you guys are doing and what this ONDAS represents. I wish I can go back to UCSB, my 19, 20-year-old, and be part of this, right? But just to answer the question, I think I resonate a lot with Zoila, just because being a first generation student kind of gives you that, first generation student gives you that motivation and inspiration to move forward and make your family proud, right? You're the first one to get your bachelor's degree. You're the first one to go get your graduate school degree. And that happened to me, and my parents are proud of me. And, for my parents, they've done so much. They sacrificed so much for me. And for me, graduating and getting my master's, that was my gift to them.
Thank you. We do want to be respectful of everyone's time. It is 7:01. Miranda, is there anything you would like to add before we conclude for tonight?
Not in particular, but I just wanted to say thank you to our 4 panelists. We really appreciated hearing about your experiences and your thoughts. Also, again, feel free to reach out to ONDAS as a resource during your time at UCSB, or if you think you're going to apply to UCSB, also feel free to reach out to us. But other than that, I hope all of you have a lovely rest of your evening.